parade.
Welcome to the Remembrance Day Ceremony for 2023. Here we are live from Gore Park, right in front of the Cenotaph. I am honored to be joined by Lieutenant Colonel Rod Padden from the Hamilton Veterans Committee. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure.
You were just telling me the actual word cenotaph has meaning. What is that?
It's a place of honor.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why we gather here every year on a Saturday, which
Yes.
is interesting this year. It doesn't happen very often.
It happens every 7 years. Normally we have a garrison parade on the Sunday, and the Legion has the parade on the 11th, and so sometimes we have two parades, except when Remembrance Day arrives on the 11th, and
it
then
all
we
happens
just have
now.
the one parade.
We can hear them. We can hear the parade. They left just a few minutes ago. They left to make their way to the Cenotaph, and we can hear them coming. They're getting ever closer.
Yeah.
Clearly, you've had a distinguished service. You've got so many medals on your chest. Where did you serve?
I joined the Royal Navy in England at the age of 16, and was trained for radio electronics and submarines, and I started service out in Singapore, and I did a number of things with the Royal Navy, and then I came to Canada almost 50 years ago, January 73, and I joined the Canadian Forces Reserves.
Wow.
And served with them for 30 years.
16 you started.
That was quite normal in England in those days. They took you as a boy seaman and then educated you.
Oh, here we have the parade. Wonderful. We're going to talk now. We're going to talk more in a little bit. Throwing now to Mike Rehill, who is the chair of the Veterans Committee, to tell us more about the 100th anniversary.
Remembrance Day in Hamilton is not a time for celebration, but a time for reflection and the appreciation of those Canadians who sacrificed their lives for peace and freedom. Remembrance Day in Canada has been commemorated since 1931. From 1921, it was termed Armistice Day, signifying the signing of the World War I armistice, which was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. The central focus of the Hamilton ceremony occurs at Gore Park at the Cenotaph. The Cenotaph in Gore Park was erected through the efforts of the Canadian Club of Hamilton to commemorate our glorious dead who sacrificed their lives during the First World War. The magnificent granite memorial was unveiled at 5 p.m. on May 22, 1923, by the Governor-General, Viscount Byng of Vimy. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the Gore Park Cenotaph. The Garrison Parade is traditionally set annually on Remembrance Sunday, the second Sunday of November. But this year, Remembrance Day falls on a Saturday, so we will see the parade move south along James Street to arrive for a service at the Cenotaph before returning again to the Armory. Please enjoy this video by the Hamilton Public Library that shares the history of the Cenotaph. Thank you again. We will remember them.
After the Parks Board was formed in 1899, one of the first pieces of business was an offer by the Canadian Club to place a steel flagpole in the Gore Park extension. The board accepted, and a flagpole in the style of an oil derrick was ordered. It was 150 feet tall and made of steel angles and pipe thoroughly galvanized and guaranteed. The total cost of this imposing structure was $165, and the official unveiling, or rather unfurling, took place on Victoria Day, 1900. The flagpole stood barely 20 years before a plan to replace it arose. In 1921, a combined committee of the Men's and Women's Canadian Club approached City Council asking permission, Parks Board consenting, to erect a cenotaph in the Gore Park extension on the site of the oil derrick flagpole. The plan to construct the cenotaph was initially proposed by John Stephen, president of the Canadian Club of Hamilton, on Thursday, June 23, 1921. The architect who was chosen to design the cenotaph was William Russell Suter. Suter was an up-and-coming architect who was a partner in the Hutton and Suter architectural firm. The monument was estimated to cost between $5,000 and $6,000. President Stephen felt the funds required could be raised by all of the Canadian clubs in Hamilton. The process of constructing the monument encountered many obstacles. Much to the chagrin of Hamilton citizens, the Canadian Club of Hamilton decided to construct the memorial of Canadian Queenston limestone. The Queenston limestone had a shorter lifespan and was considered to be a poorer material to use for the construction of a memorial. Fortunately, the decision was overturned and the memorial was made of granite, since it was a harder stone and required less maintenance than limestone. On November 11, 1922, a Remembrance Day service was held on the site, although only the base of the monument was completed. The cenotaph in Hamilton's Gore Park is a replica of the British cenotaph in Westminster, London. The landmark consists of a huge granite column with an apparent casket at its summit. Two smaller columns are at its side. Mounted on the two columns are carved replicas of the equipment used by Canadian troops in the First World War. The magnificent granite memorial was unveiled at 5 p.m. on May 22, 1923, by the Governor-General, Viscount Byng of Vimy. This was especially meaningful as it was Byng who had led the Canadians to the successful capture of Vimy Ridge in 1917. During the ceremony, 2 minutes of silence was held. All motion and noise ceased as motorists on nearby streets stopped to join the spectators in paying their respects to the soldiers who had died, aiding the Allies in the First World War. The cenotaph commemorated the 53,000 Canadian soldiers, 2,000 of them Hamiltonians, who were killed during the First World War. In the summer of 1947, it was noted in The Spectator that the carved inscription 1939 to 1945, to represent World War II, would be ready for the Memorial Day ceremony on August 24th. Over time, several suggestions were brought forward to the United Council of Veterans regarding the improvement of the cenotaph. On March 19, 1953, the Council received a sketch of the memorial with improvements that included bronze posts linked together by a bronze-plated steel chain. The bronze posts were intended to house the badges that were issued to veterans of both World Wars. Other improvements included the addition of shrubbery and floodlighting at night. The estimated cost for the alterations was $2,000. A few months later, these proposed improvements were approved. In 1957, the United Council of Veterans complained that the cenotaph was being desecrated by people waiting for the bus directly beside it. They requested that the bus stop be removed. They blamed the damage on teenage boys on their way home from school. Over the years to come, the cenotaph has come to be the cornerstone of Hamilton's Remembrance Day services. While attendance during the 1970s and 80s was sparse, in recent years attendance has increased dramatically, and the ceremonies have become a central event in Hamilton on November 11th. The eastern portion of Gore Park was dedicated as Veterans Place on June 5, 2006. It was intended to be a center of remembrance for city veterans of all wars. The Gore Park Master Plan called for the renovation of the cenotaph and a major shift in its placement. It was removed from the site, and during this process a metal tube was found inside the monument. It was determined that the metal tube contained a roll of honor of the Hamiltonians killed during the First World War that was placed there during the original dedication ceremonies. Contemporary newspaper articles quoted R. Lansfield, Canadian Club president of the day, as saying, "This is no empty tomb. Within its depths lie a scroll bearing the names of 1,800 Canadians who gave their lives in the cause for right and freedom." The original tube was placed inside a new capsule with the words, "We will remember them," inscribed on it. On October 14, 2014, the capsule was placed back in the cenotaph. In addition to the original scroll, it contained letters from Mayor Bob Bratina, the Canadian Club, and the city's Veterans Committee, as well as City of Hamilton Overseas Service lapel pins that acknowledged service in Europe, Afghanistan, and in peacekeeping operations. While the cenotaph had been removed from its location, the area to the west of the monument was completely rebuilt by removing the last remnants of the famous Gore Park washrooms. They had been originally built in 1913 and had been closed and filled in at the time of the 1983 renovations of the park. When the statue of Sir John A. Macdonald is moved to the other side of Houston Street, the section of Gore Park containing the cenotaph will be dedicated solely to Hamilton's veterans and war dead.
Stops being stirring. Thank you, Mike, for that wonderful video. I'm so honored to be back here with Lieutenant Colonel Rod Padden from the Hamilton Veterans Committee. You're lucky enough to actually have some fellow servicemen and women here today. And what do you, as someone who's been through this, what does Remembrance Day mean to you, and what are you thinking about today?
Remembrance Day means an awful lot to me. My grandfather died in the First World War. His wife died as a firefighter in London in the Second World War. My father served in the Second World War. I served in the British forces, and my last deployment with the Canadian forces was in Yugoslavia. And I remember not only the people that I went with and came back with, but the people who I didn't come back with. And I always imagine that coming to the cenotaph, particularly the cenotaph and not the sort of little private events that go on around the cities, is acknowledging the history and the commitment not only of those that died, but of those that came back, many of them with injuries, physical and mental.
Do you have grandchildren?
I have 2 grandsons, and both of them in the early days since I retired from the military used to come to this service with me and hold my hand. I was unlucky enough to be struck with PTSD after Yugoslavia, and I used to come every year, and one of my 2 grandsons would stand with me and hold my hand during the last post and the minutes of silence. And as a consequence, I can now actually go through that without crying. So it means an awful lot to me, and it means a great deal to me and some of my friends that everybody comes down here and joins in our celebration of what the Canadian Forces has been able to accomplish.
We don't have enough time to talk about this, but in a few words, can you say how important it is to teach the young people?
It's very difficult. Members of the Legion and some other veterans groups visit schools and try to explain it. But it's not something that you can say, well, it's just like a this or just like a that. The memories and the feelings of the speaker depend on what they did. I mean, there are people who are fighting in combat, and there are people counting bullets, back in some storeroom. Their contribution to the conflict or to the victory is just as important. And as a consequence, for instance, in my badge, I wear the logistics badge. I've worn other badges, but for the last 30 years, I wore the logistics badge, and nobody ever told me I wasn't a soldier. But you know, like every one of these guys in uniform or wearing berets are my brothers.
Rod, thank you so much for being here today and telling us about your experiences. The official ceremony is about to begin, and we hand it back to Mike Rehill, who is the Veterans Committee Chair.
Thank you.
Steve, great attention.
Hooray! Oh! Hooray! Oh, 10! Look! Our July Color Party, carry colors!
Silver Cross families, members of government, veterans, and Hamiltonians, welcome to the annual Remembrance Day Memorial Service. My name is Major Mike Rehill. I am the chair of the City of Hamilton Veterans Committee and your Master of Ceremonies for this morning's service. We recognize that the City of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. I would like to recognize our reviewing officer for this morning's parade, Naval Captain Sean Batt, OMM-CD. I would also like to recognize a World War II veteran that we were honored to have here today, Private Tony Mastromateo from the 1st Battalion, Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. Thank you, sir, for your service. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that this year marks the 100th anniversary of the cenotaph behind me. This was unveiled on May 23, 1923, by the Governor General, Viscount Byng of Vimy. Our garrison units and veterans have been marching here to commemorate our fallen for 100 years. We will begin with the singing of our national anthem, led by the Hamilton Children's Choir and accompanied by the HMCS Star Band. I now call upon Captain Padre Michael Aldred for the opening reflection.
As we gather in this place of sacred memory, may the words I share now be for some the prayers of your heart, for others a reflection of your heartfelt thanksgiving, and for all, may these words speak to our duty to remember. For today is a time to remember, to remind ourselves of the past and to bring the past to life. Today is a time to remember that life in Canada as we know it is not a given. It is the fruit of labors, the struggles, and the sacrifices of the past. So let us remember those who answered the call to battle and those who never came home. Let us remember those who were wounded and who bear the scars on their bodies, their memories and their souls. May this gathering today bring them peace and healing. Let us remember those families bereaved by the loss of a loved one. Let us remember with gratitude the thousands of Canadians who decided today voluntarily to serve Canada before themselves. Let us remember that the tomb of the unknown soldier represents thousands of Canadian faces and names. May each name become an additional motivation to work for peace and to put an end to the conflicts and divisions that plague our world. May our decisions and actions be imbued with courage and values of peace and hospitality that make true dialogue possible. May our remembrance invite us to take action so as to choose diplomacy over violence and to choose to celebrate differences rather than exclusion. Lest we forget. Amen.
We will now have Cadet Warrant Officer Kaylee Mason and Cadet Master Corporal Kieran Thieker from the 2349 Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders Cadet Corps read the iconic poem In Flanders Fields.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amidst the gun below. We are the dead, short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to whom failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep through the poppies grow in Flanders fields.
We'll now observe the act of remembrance, the last post, 2-minute silence, the rouse, and the lament. Rated attention.
Ready, attention! Color party, carry, go!
In 1914, the English poet Lawrence Binyon wrote a poem entitled For the Fallen. Today we recite a part of this poem as the final part of the act of remembrance. I would like to call upon the past chair of the Hamilton Veterans Committee, Bob Fife, to read the Veterans Prayer.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Thank you. Thank you. Next one.
Okay. I now call upon those with wreaths to proceed to the cenotaph. During the wreath laying, the Hamilton Children's Choir will sing Blessing, followed by the Healthy Men's Indigenous Drum Circle performing an honor song for those who made the supreme sacrifice. I would like to acknowledge the wreaths made by the students of Queen Victoria School and Kathy Weaver School, as well as J.C. Hill Elementary School from Ashweekan. Please begin the placing of the wreaths. First wreath is placed on behalf of Silver Cross Mothers, and it was laid by Bev McGaw. We now proceed with the federal, provincial, and municipal wreaths, and then the wreaths of the various regiments after that.
Shine forth upon your face.
God save the King. Padre Eldred will now close the service with a blessing.
For the closing benediction, let us turn our heartfelt request to those who suffer as a result of conflict, as we ask for peace. For the servicemen and women who have died in violence of war, each one known and remembered to you, grant them peace. For all members of the armed forces who are in danger this day, remembering families, friends, and all who long for their safe return, grant them peace. For civilian women, children, and men whose lives are marred by war, grant them peace. For peacemakers and peacekeepers who seek to keep this world secure and free, grant them peace. For all who bear the burden and the privilege of leadership, political, military, religious, we ask for gifts of wisdom in search for reconciliation. Grant them peace. Amen.
Thank you to our Silver Cross families, representatives of government, parade participants, and all citizens who joined us for today's ceremony. Today we've expressed our gratitude, our sorrow, and our pride for all those who have served, fought, and suffered, and died for the freedoms we enjoy today. Lest we forget. This concludes the ceremony. Thank you.
Attention!